The wilderness sprawled before the adventurers like an endless maze of towering pines and thick undergrowth. A distant roll of thunder echoed through the darkening sky as Triton glanced over his shoulder, rain beginning to patter against his worn armor.
"We need shelter, and fast,"
he said, his tone clipped. Mezra nodded, pulling her cloak tighter around herself as the wind picked up.
Agreed. But it will be very difficult to find any shelter in this part of the forest.
Maybe we'll stumble on some kind of refuge,
Ven said lightly, though his usual humor carried an edge of uncertainty. Lana muttered,
Refuge or not, I'd rather not bed down soaked and freezing.
Aye, this damn storm had to happen now.
Grod rumbled, his great axe slung over his shoulder.
But if we don't find something soon, we might have to settle for some tree cover.
As if conjured by their need, a castle emerged from the trees, its silhouette stark against the stormy sky. Massive towers clawed at the heavens, and ivy clung to its crumbling stone walls. The gates hung slightly ajar, swaying in the rising wind.
"Convenient,"
Triton said warily, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sword.
Too convenient.
Lana added, narrowing her eyes.
"It's shelter. We'll figure out the rest once we're inside."
The heavy doors groaned as Triton pushed them open, revealing a vast and darkened hall. Mezra's fingers danced in a quick motion, summoning a ball of light that hovered above her palm, casting a pale glow over the space. Dust hung thick in the air, disturbed only by the echoes of their footsteps.
No signs of life, it appears.
Mezra murmured, her light revealing the remains of an ornate chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling.
"Let's keep it that way,"
Triton said. He then turned to face the group.
"We will scout around to see if anyone or anything else lurks here that may be a potential threat to us. This place is too big to tackle all at once, so we split up. Mezra and I will take the north wing. Lana, you and Grod cover the east. Ven, you'll hold this room. Secure it as our fallback point."
Ven smirked, tapping the whip coiled at his side.
Guard duty. A noble assignment, I'm sure.
"Keep it clear, and don't leave this room,"
Triton ordered firmly.
"We'll regroup here once we are finished with our rounds."
The corridor stretched ahead, its darkness seeming to ripple and breathe with the weight of centuries. Triton led the way, his grip firm on his sword hilt, the blade already drawn and gleaming faintly in the soft, pulsing light Mezra conjured with a whispered incantation. The magical orb hovered above her palm, casting long, flickering shadows across the damp stone walls. The air here felt heavier, colder. Each step stirred up the scent of mildew and something far less pleasant, decay. Mezra's boots scuffed against the stone, her voice low.
This place, it doesn't just feel abandoned. It feels wrong.
Triton glanced back, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes sharp, scanning the darkness that seemed to press in around them.
"Are you sensing anything specific?"
Mezra shook her head, her expression taut.
Not yet. It's just a feeling, but I don't like it.
"You're not alone. If we run into trouble, I need you at my back."
Always.
Mezra replied with a small, reassuring nod. They moved deeper, entering a larger chamber. Mezra's light flared, revealing a grand dining hall, long abandoned to the passage of time. The massive wooden table dominating the room was splintered and warped, its surface thick with dust. Chairs lay overturned or shattered, and the remnants of once gilded candelabras glinted faintly in the magical glow.
This must have been impressive once.
Mezra said softly, her eyes scanning the room.
A banquet hall fit for royalty.
Triton didn't respond. His gaze had locked onto something at the far end of the room, a hunched figure, partially obscured in shadow.
"Mezra, do you see it?"
he said quietly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. She turned, following his line of sight. The figure moved, a grotesque, lurching motion that sent a chill down her spine. Slowly, it turned toward them, its pale, gaunt face catching the edge of her light. The creature's eyes were milky and lifeless, but its expression was anything but. Its lips pulled back in a hideous snarl, revealing jagged, yellowed teeth.
That's a ghoul.
"Behind me."
Triton ordered, stepping forward and raising his shield.
Light it up, Mez.
The ghoul hissed, its claws scraping against the stone floor as it lunged. Triton met it head-on, his sword arcing through the air in a calculated strike. The blade connected with the creature's shoulder, but instead of falling back, it clawed at him with feral intensity. Triton blocked the attack with his shield, the force of the blow rattling his arm.
It's strong,
He grunted. Mezra stepped to the side, her fingers weaving a quick pattern in the air. A bolt of fire erupted from her palm, slamming into the ghoul's side. The creature shrieked, its skin bubbling where the flame struck, but it kept coming.
It's not enough.
Mezra shouted, panic creeping into her voice.
I know.
Triton growled, sidestepping a swipe of the ghoul's claws and countering with a thrust of his blade. The sword pierced the creature's abdomen, but still, it pressed forward, snapping at him with its gnarled teeth.
Again!
Triton barked. Mezra raised her hand, summoning another bolt of flame. This one struck the ghoul square in the chest, searing through its withered flesh. It staggered, its movements slowing as it let out a guttural, agonized wail. Triton seized the moment, driving his sword into the creature's heart with all his strength. The ghoul spasmed violently, its claws raking uselessly at the air before it collapsed in a lifeless heap. The room fell silent, save for the sound of their labored breathing. Triton pulled his sword free, wiping it clean on the ghoul's tattered rags.
Are you all right?
Mezra asked, stepping closer to inspect him.
I'm fine.
Triton said, though his voice was heavy with exhaustion. He glanced at the creature's remains.
That thing was tougher than it looked.
Ghouls usually are. They're creatures of hunger and rage. Nothing but instincts driving them.
Mezra said grimly, Triton's eyes scanning the room once more.
Let's move. Whatever else is in this place, I don't want to meet it unprepared.
Mezra nodded, though her gaze lingered on the fallen ghoul.
We should warn the others. If this is the kind of thing we're up against, we'll need more than luck to get out of here.
Agreed.
Triton said, leading the way back to the corridor, and with that, they pressed onward, the oppressive darkness of the castle swallowing them once more. Lana moved silently through the narrow corridor, her daggers gripped tightly in her hands, their polished surfaces glinting faintly in the torchlight Grod carried behind her. The air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of mildew lingered, the oppressive silence broken only by the soft creak of their boots against the ancient wooden floorboards.
You'd think a place like this would have something interesting to show for itself.
Lana whispered, her voice barely audible.
Maybe it did once. Doesn't look like anyone's been here in decades. Whatever was valuable probably walked off with the last man standing.
Grod replied, his deep voice low but steady. Lana shot him a glance over her shoulder.
You don't know that. Castles like this, sometimes they hide their best treasures away. You just have to know where to look.
Treasure, huh? You've got a one-track mind. Shouldn't we be focusing on surviving the night?
Surviving is a given. But if we can profit while we're at it, why not?
Lana said confidently. They entered a larger chamber that seemed different from the decaying halls they had passed through. The air here felt heavier, more charged, and the stone walls glistened faintly as though damp. At the center of the room stood a large ornate chest, its gold filigree catching the flickering light of Grod's torch.
Looks promising.
Lana said with a smirk, moving toward the chest with a predator's grace. Grod frowned, his instincts screaming caution.
Wait, lass. Something's not right here.
It's a chest. What could go wrong?
Lana replied, kneeling before it.
Everything. Chests like that. They don't just sit in a place like this without reason.
Lana ignored him, her fingers brushing over the intricate lock. She let out a low whistle.
Craftsmanship like this doesn't come cheap. Whatever's inside must be worth it.
Grod sighed heavily, shifting his grip on his great axe.
Just be careful. I don't want to explain to Triton how you got yourself killed over some shiny baubles.
Relax, Grod.
Lana teased, her tone playful but focused.
I've got this.
As soon as her fingers pressed against the chest's surface, it began to shudder. Grod's eyes widened in alarm. and Lana scrambled back just as the chest began to ripple, its ornate design twisting and warping into something grotesque. The lid snapped open, revealing rows of jagged teeth that dripped with a foul, viscous fluid. A low, guttural growl echoed from within as a long, slimy pseudopod lashed out, narrowly missing Lana's shoulder.
Lana, move!
Grod roared, his torch clattering to the floor as he hefted his great axe. He brought it down with a mighty swing, the blade biting deep into the creature's side. The creature let out an unearthly screech, thrashing violently as it turned its attention to Grod.
I'm fine.
Lana shouted, rolling to her feet and drawing her daggers.
But what in the nine hells is that thing?
A mimic. They disguise themselves as treasure to lure in idiots like you.
Grod growled, dodging another whip-like strike from the creature's tongue.
Idiot? You're lucky I'm quick, or I'd be its midnight snack.
Lana snapped, slashing at the mimic's appendage as it darted toward her again. The mimic lashed out once more, striking Grod squarely in the chest with its adhesive tongue and luring him back into its maw. He grunts in pain as the creature tries devouring him.
Grod!
Lana shouted as she charged forward with fluid precision. Her first dagger sank into the mimic's side, twisting viciously before she yanked it free. She immediately followed with a swift slash from her second blade. The mimic let out an ear-piercing screech, convulsing wildly as it spat out Grod. He tumbled free, coated in a sticky residue, his armor bearing deep dents from the creature's teeth. The creature let out a final, guttural wail before collapsing into a puddle of black, foul-smelling ooze.
Are you okay?
Lana asked with concern, helping him stand.
Aye, no thanks to your curiosity for mimic treasure chests.
Grod bellowed as he slowly stood up. He leaned heavily on his weapon, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath.
Damn thing almost had me.
Almost.
Lana said, expressing a relief that Grod was okay. She glanced at the dissolving remains of the mimic and let out a heavy sigh.
So much for treasure.
I told you to be careful. Next time, listen.
Grod grumbled, shaking his head. Lana smirked, despite the lingering tension in her muscles.
And miss all the excitement? Not a chance.
Grod groaned, retrieving his torch from the ground.
Let's just hope Triton and Mezra are having an easier time than us.
Where's the fun in that?
Lana said with a grin, though her eyes betrayed her unease. As they left the chamber, the flickering torchlight cast long, ominous shadows on the walls, the faint echoes of their footsteps swallowed by the oppressive silence of the castle. Triton and Mezra arrived at the study first, their footsteps echoing faintly against the cold stone floor. Mezra's light spell bathed the room in a soft glow, revealing Ven seated in a high-backed chair by the desk. His whip was coiled neatly on the desk beside him, and his hands rested on the arms of the chair as if he had been waiting for them.
Ven?
Triton called, his voice steady, but edged with caution. Ven slowly turned his head, his face partially obscured by shadows. When he finally looked at them fully, his eyes glowed faintly, an unnatural light flickering within them. The warmth and mischief usually present in his expression were gone, replaced by a cold, calculating stare.
You took your time?
Ven said, his voice lower and colder than usual, sending a chill down Mezra's spine. Triton took a step forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword.
We had a few distractions. Are you all right? You look off.
Ven chuckled softly, the sound hollow and unnerving.
I'm more than all right. In fact, I feel renewed.
The door creaked open as Lana and Grod entered. Grod immediately noticed the tension in the room, his massive frame tensing as he gripped his great axe. Lana's sharp gaze darted between Triton and Ven, sensing something was amiss.
What's going on here?
Lana asked, her voice low but sharp. Before Triton could respond, Ven stood, his movements slow and deliberate, like a predator sizing up its prey.
What's going on is that you shouldn't be here. None of you should be here. This castle doesn't take kindly to intruders.
That's not you talking. Something's inside you.
Mezra said, stepping closer to Triton. Her voice trembled slightly, though she held her light spell steady. Ven smiled, a cold and humorless expression.
Inside me? No, Mez. I am the castle now, and the castle is me. You've trespassed, and now all of you are going to pay for it.
In one fluid motion, Ven snapped up his whip, the enchanted leather crackling with dark energy as it lashed out toward Triton. Triton raised his shield just in time, the whip striking it with a deafening crack.
Ven, stop!
Triton shouted, his voice commanding but edged with desperation.
This isn't you. Fight it!
Ven tilted his head, his glowing eyes narrowing.
Fight it? Why would I fight this power I've been given? You're the ones who should be fighting. For your lives.
He struck again, this time aiming for Mezra. She barely managed to dodge, the whip slicing through the air where she had stood moments before. The crack of its impact reverberated through the room, sending a shiver through everyone present.
Lana, circle him. Grod, pin him if you can.
Triton commanded, stepping forward to draw Ven's attention. Lana darted to the side, her daggers glinting in the dim light as she sought an opening. Grod let out a battle cry and lunged toward Ven, his massive arms outstretched. Ven moved with an agility that wasn't his own, sidestepping Grod and delivering a lashing strike to the fighter's back. Grod stumbled, gritting his teeth against the pain, but he didn't fall.
Hold still, you slippery twig!
Grod growled, swinging his great axe in a wide arc. Triton closed the distance.
We don't want to hurt you!
He shouted as he pressed forward. Ven laughed darkly, his voice echoing unnaturally.
Then you've already lost.
Mezra began chanting, her light spell flaring brighter as she wove the incantation for a banishment spell. The air around her shimmered with energy, and the faint outlines of runes appeared in the space between her hands.
Keep him distracted!
Mezra shouted, her voice steady despite the strain of her casting.
Easier said than done.
Lana snapped, ducking under another strike from Ven's whip. She retaliated with a swipe of her daggers, but Ven twisted out of reach, his movements fluid and almost inhuman.
You can't stop me. This place is alive, and it will consume you all.
Not today.
Triton growled, slamming his shield into Ven with enough force to knock him back a step. The distraction was enough. Mezra's chant reached its crescendo, and a wave of shimmering energy burst forth, enveloping Ven. He screamed, the sound a blend of his own voice and the spirit's, as the spectral form was forcibly ripped from his body. The spirit shrieked, its ethereal form writhing before dissipating into the air. Ven collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Triton rushed to his side, kneeling beside him.
Ven, are you with us?
Triton said urgently. Ven looked up, his eyes no longer glowing, but filled with exhaustion and confusion.
What? What happened?
You were possessed. The spirit of this dark castle got inside you.
Ven groaned, sitting up slowly with Triton's help.
Remind me to never take solo watch again.
Triton stood panning the room, his expression grim.
We're not out of this yet. The storm's still raging, and I doubt the castle is done with us. Everyone stay close, and no one goes off alone. Understood?
The others nodded, their usual banter subdued as the weight of their ordeal settled over them. The flickering torchlight and the distant howl of the storm served as a chilling reminder that the night was far from over. Hours dragged on with excruciating slowness. Triton paced the room, the steady clink of his boots on the stone floor the only sound beyond the storm's wrath. Grod had dozed off against the wall, his great axe resting across his lap, while Lana lay stretched out near the fireplace, her daggers within easy reach. Mezra sat close by, meditating to regain some strength, her hands occasionally twitching as if still caught in the motions of casting spells. Ven was also sound asleep, giving off a slight snoring sound, reflecting his exhaustion. The storm finally began to wane in the early hours of the morning. The howling winds gave way to a steady drizzle, and the oppressive atmosphere of the castle seemed to lift slightly. Triton stood by the doorway, watching as the first faint rays of light pierced through the storm clouds.
It's letting up. We can leave.
There was a collective sigh of relief as the adventurers gathered their gear. Grod hefted his great axe, nodding to Triton.
Let's get the hell out of here, then!
As they exited the castle, the damp morning air felt like a blessing, despite its chill. They moved quickly, eager to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the cursed place. Ven glanced back at the towering silhouette of the castle, shrouded in mist.
I'll be happy if I never see that place again.
His facial expression suddenly turned into horror when he sees a sinister creature in one of the windows with an overextended smile, staring right at Ven before it disappeared.
Ven, what's wrong?
Lana suddenly looked back, only to see the dark, towering castle.
Nothing. I just have a funny feeling that my experience being possessed won't be the last one.
Mezra, though exhausted, managed a faint smile, reassuring Ven while patting his back.
I would not ponder on those thoughts now, as it will only cause you undue worry. It's behind us, Ven. We have to focus on what's ahead.
Triton led the group forward towards their next destination. As they moved away from the castle, the eerie sense of being watched faded, replaced by the familiar sounds of the waking forest. For now, they had escaped the haunted refuge, but the memory of that night would linger with them long after they returned to the safety of the road.